Okay, so we are at the 3 o'clock mark, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us for this webinar on the Charge Up Fairfax program. Today, you're going to hear about how this program can help community associations overcome the technical and financial barriers to installing on-site electric vehicle charging stations for their residents. Today's webinar is being hosted by Fairfax County's Office of Environmental and Energy Coordination. My name is Kate Daly. I'm an environmental analyst for the office, and I will be your host and moderator for today's webinar. My colleague Emily Bohr is also here and will be assisting with the webinar. And our presenter today is Gina Weil. Gina is the project manager of Charge Up Fairfax, leading the development and implementation of the program. She's worked in environmental policy for the last 20 years and joined Fairfax County following a career in federal government. We're going to go over a few housekeeping items with you. This webinar is being recorded, so we'll send a link to the recording and the presentation slides to all attendees after the meeting. Additionally, all attendees will be muted with cameras off, and if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them through the chat portal on your screen. If you're not familiar with Microsoft Teams, the chat feature icon is shown on the screen. You can click on the icon and then type your question in the chat box, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers after the presentation. So now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter, Gina Weil, who will share an overview of the program and how community associations can apply. Gina, take it away.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you so much to everybody joining us today. So in Fairfax County, transportation is the sector with the largest source of emissions. That means there's the largest impact and also the most opportunity to bring down local greenhouse gas emissions. And EVs produce less than 25% of the emissions of a gas-powered vehicle. In Virginia, where our grid is getting greener, the emissions reduction potential is even greater. While there are typically higher upfront costs with EVs due to reduced fuel and maintenance needs, drivers can save approximately $6,000 to $10,000 over the car's lifetime. There are also federal incentives that are available to help with upfront costs for both new and used EVs. And starting this year, taxpayers may be able to transfer the tax credit to a registered dealer at the point of sale, reducing the upfront cost of the vehicle. So charging is, of course, a major consideration for those who are thinking of driving an EV. Level 1 is the slowest charging option. This is most commonly seen in single-family homes where drivers can easily plug into an outlet in their private garage or driveway. Level 2 charging can fully charge an EV in around 4 to 10 hours. This is most common in multifamily communities, workplaces, and businesses. For Charge Up Fairfax, we're talking about level 2 charging. And DC fast charging is much more energy intensive. This is more common for heavily trafficked corridors. So Charge Up Fairfax is designed to help community associations like homeowners associations, condominium associations, co-ops, and cluster communities provide at-home electric vehicle charging for residents and their guests. The most common place to charge an EV is at home. For many people, that's the most convenient and affordable option. But residents of community associations may face unique challenges to at-home charging, especially if they don't have a private garage or a driveway. Charge Up Fairfax helps residents of these communities with their unique challenges by providing both technical and financial assistance. At-home charging is also an attractive amenity to many home buyers and renters. Once someone owns an EV, they're unlikely to consider moving to a community that does not offer at-home charging options. So over the last year, the county has been working with 10 pilot program participants. Feedback from the initial pilot program communities has been very positive. Some of the feedback I've received so far is that participation in the program has taken away the daunting part of the process of providing EV charging in their community, and that the support and communication from the county has helped to provide ease. Charge Up Fairfax is designed to help communities access shared EV charging stations. That means the charging stations must be accessible to all residents and to their guests. The program components are listed on this slide, and I will go into greater detail on each of these items in the following slides. In general, the topics that are in blue are the community's responsibility, and those in green are the county's responsibility. So a community must first examine their needs to determine the best path forward. We recommend that boards of directors take the steps that are outlined here to get started. Board of directors should survey their residents. It's important to assess the demand and plan for the right number of chargers in the community. The county has developed a sample survey that boards of directors may use to send out to residents to collect their initial feedback. Communities should also identify preferred charging locations. For this program, the charging stations and the parking spots must be located on property that's owned by the community association. The closer the stations are to a transformer or to an existing power panel, the cheaper and more feasible the project will usually be. Communities should also examine their governing documents and consider how to pay for EV charging equipment. So communities that apply and have been selected for Charge Up Fairfax first receive an engineering site visit from a firm that is contracted by the county. County staff and technical experts conduct the site visit to examine the community's preferred charging location. Following the site visit, the county provides a feasibility memo that addresses the power needs, any physical or environmental barriers, and estimated project costs and next steps. The goal is to provide the community with the information they need to make an informed decision about how to move forward with their project. One of the important components of the feasibility memo is the engineering drawing that's provided to the community. An example of one of the drawings is shown here, and communities are able to provide both the engineering drawing and the feasibility memo to contractors to obtain quotes on their projects. And finally, project installation is the responsibility of the community association. The board of directors will obtain quotes from qualified contractors. In addition to installing equipment, the contractor may help to purchase equipment, coordinate permitting, and address any power needs. Implementation is on the community's timeline, so it's up to each community to determine how quickly they're ready to move forward. The project must be complete in order to request the reimbursement funds, and the request for reimbursement must be made to the county within 1 year of acceptance into the program. The reimbursement grant is intended to help with the cost of installation. The eligible expenses include the final engineering drawing and installation costs, the EV charging equipment itself, and electrical work that's necessary to power or install the charging stations. The full list of the eligible and ineligible expenses are detailed on the Charge Up Fairfax webpage, and all communities that are selected for Charge Up Fairfax qualify for a grant to cover 1/3 of eligible expenses up to $5,000. We use the Fairfax County Vulnerability Index and the federal government's Justice 40 initiative to determine equity designated areas. I will use the physical address to confirm whether a community is located in one of these areas. And communities located in one of these equity designated areas qualify for additional grant funds up to $10,000 following the installation of their EV charging equipment. So we're now offering a new grant-only option to communities that have a strong technical understanding of their project and are ready to hire a contractor, but still need financial support to move forward with their EV installation. Those communities would not receive an engineering site visit, a feasibility memo, or any technical support from the county. Communities will indicate at the time of application whether they would like to be considered for this grant-only option. Acceptance is at the discretion of county staff. Communities that are not accepted to the grant-only option will still be considered for full program participation with technical support. All communities that are approved for the grant-only participation are eligible for funds to cover 1/3 of eligible expenses for the installation of shared EV charging stations up to $7,000. And communities that are approved for the grant-only track in the equity designated areas that I mentioned on the last slide are eligible for up to $12,000 of grant funds. Applications to Charge Up Fairfax are open now through June 30th. The application is currently available online along with other resources on the Charge Up Fairfax webpage. The first step, like I mentioned earlier, is to survey residents and select preferred locations for your charging equipment. I recommend downloading the application and completing it over time. You may wish to receive input from your management company or other members of the board of directors or community, so it may take a few weeks to complete the application package. All submissions will be considered after the application period has closed. I really encourage folks to download the application early and also sign up for program updates on our webpage. The current timeline for this application period is shown here. As I mentioned, applications for Charge Up Fairfax are open now through June 30th, and selections will be made in July. I'll work with the selected communities to schedule the engineering site visits. We'll then have a call with the technical experts to discuss the details of the feasibility memo and the next steps the community can take. The selected communities will then request quotes and hire a contractor of their choice to install EV charging equipment and coordinate on permitting and any power needs. Following installation, communities may request funds to partially reimburse the cost of installation. Thank you again for your interest and for joining us today. I would like to turn it back to Kate for any questions.
That was great, Gina. Thank you so much. Lots of great information about the Charge Up Fairfax program and how it can benefit our community associations in Fairfax County. While you were sharing information about the Charge Up Fairfax program, we did post the link to the program page in the chat, as well as the site where you can submit an application. But first, we'd like to turn to questions that may have come up. Again, if you had any questions come up, please post them in the chat and we will get to them. We'll start with a few here. Gina, how many communities will be accepted into the program in this application period? And will there be another application period?
Great question. Thank you, Kate. This application period, we will accept up to 8 communities. I do anticipate there will be another application period. We have not yet announced the dates, but I am planning on another application period for the fall. And in order to be kept up to date when we are accepting applications, please sign up for updates on the Charge Up Fairfax webpage. I will email anybody who has signed up for those updates with information on future application periods.
Great, thank you. And then we had a question come in about how much money is available for each community.
Great, thank you. So all communities qualify for up to $5,000, 1/3 of the cost of installation up to $5,000. In equity designated areas, communities qualify for up to $10,000, and these funds are paid on a reimbursable basis. So following the installation of the shared EV charging stations. We are now also offering the new grant only option for communities that feel they are ready to forego the technical aspects and they're prepared to move forward with the installation, but need that additional financial support. In those cases, communities that are accepted for the grant only option qualify for up to $7,000, or in equity designated areas up to $12,000 in grant funds, also paid on a reimbursable basis following the installation of the shared charging equipment.
Great information. So what tips do you have for community associations to submit a strong application? What have you learned in the pilot program that can be applied?
Thank you. Well, I will share that the application really walks you through how we're considering the applications once we review them. So our scoring rubric mirrors that application. I encourage folks to go through the exploration process, really talk with residents of your community. I recommend that folks survey residents. Like I mentioned, we do have a sample survey available. It's important to understand what the community demand is that ultimately will inform how many charging stations you'd like to move forward with at this time, and it may help you plan for future installations as well. It's also important to select a site that is suitable. So a location that's close to a power source is generally going to be the most feasible and the less expensive for communities, and really demonstrate a readiness to move forward. If you can demonstrate that you've considered the location, have talked with residents, that you've planned for the budget, that your policies reflect the desire to move forward, and maybe you've considered policies that your community would adopt to guide parking in the EV charging stations once they're installed. I think that's very helpful just to really demonstrate the amount of readiness and support that your community has. I also can't emphasize enough to please submit all of the requested documents, most importantly. And I'm always available as well. If anybody has questions as they're going through the application process, I encourage people to call or email me, and I'm happy to talk through that if you do have questions as you go.
We had a good question come in about if there's a list of pilot communities that interested community associations could possibly visit to see what's working and how much space might be needed and other considerations like that.
That's a great question. Thank you. So there is a list of the pilot communities on our website. The names of the communities are listed there. Folks are still in that installation phase with the pilot program. So we have a couple installations that it looks like we'll move forward in the next several months, but there's no installations at this time. Folks have received quotes, and they're talking with their boards of directors and communities about moving forward with some of those quotes. And we will post case study information on our website once there are installations in place, so we can make sure to really share those lessons learned with the broader community as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, another question. If the community is selected, is the community required to share those charging stations with other EV owners who are not also members of the community?
That's a great question. Thank you. So Charge Up Fairfax, the installations must be available to all residents and to their guests. So not the broader public, but to folks who live in the community. Everybody who lives there must have access, and their guests as well. And it is up to communities to put in place reasonable restrictions. So it's perfectly fine if you want to install charging stations that require a PIN, have a keypad that you may have a fob or a card to access the stations, or if perhaps you can make a reservation on an app. As long as that's available to everybody in the community, and their guests may also access that via their PIN or fob, that's just fine. So it's not serving the broader community, and they would not be made available to the public. Just ensuring that they're not in a place that's reserved for an individual resident is really the goal there. So we're making use of the visitor parking spaces in communities.
So if I wanted to install a charging station in my reserved parking space, can you just reiterate if I'd be able to apply or not?
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, because Charge Up Fairfax uses county funds, the charging spaces must be accessible for all residents. So it's not for individual homeowners for a private use. There are some programs that may support folks who want to install a charging station in their private reserved parking space. I believe Dominion may have an incentive program. And additional information is available on our EV chart on our EV website. with all incentive programs if you're interested in exploring other options.
Thank you. And let's say I'm from a community association that maybe already put in EV charging stations, let's say last year, would we still be able to apply for reimbursement?
Thank you. No, unfortunately not. So communities that apply and are accepted into the Charge Up Fairfax program are eligible for the technical support and also the reimbursement funds. If you're considering installing additional charging stations, I would certainly encourage you to apply for those.
Great. And we had another question come in about, are homeowners allowed to run cables across the community sidewalk to charge their own vehicle in their own space? I have heard that this is not allowed.
Thank you. This is an ongoing discussion. This question does come up from time to time, and it falls under our Land Development Services Department. They regulate permitting for the county. We are coordinating closely with them to make sure we can communicate updated policies. But at this time, there are some specific codes that we would want to make sure are in place. And of course, one of the requirements is that cables be kept off the ground. So sidewalks can create a complicating factor. But I'm happy if if the person who asked this question would like to send me an email. I have some information I can share with you, a link and a document if you're interested in reading more about that.
Great, thanks. And yes, your email's up on the screen, so that's a great way to contact Gina after this webinar if you have any questions about the program or EV charging. Okay, one more question came in. Do HOAs with cluster organizations that have parking areas for the cluster residents only meet the community requirement?
I guess I would ask a follow-up question of whether visitors are allowed to park there. So what we're really seeing is for this program, they would make use of visitor parking spaces that could be used by anybody, or if you have anybody who lives in the community, any residents, or if you have a friend or a family member come visit, that they would be allowed to park in that parking space, that their car wouldn't be towed, for example, if they park in that parking space.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions come in. Last call for questions in the chat. Otherwise, we are happy to wrap things up today. So thank you again for joining us on this webinar for Charge Up Fairfax. Please look for an email with the presentations from today's webinar and a link to the recording in the next few days. And if you want to learn more about Charge Up Fairfax, please visit www.fairfaxcounty.gov/environment-energy-coordination/charge-up-fairfax and sign up for updates. You can also contact Gina directly by email, and I'll just read it out, but it's on our screen as well. Regina.Weil, W-E-I-L, at fairfaxcounty.gov, or phone at 703-324-5955. As a reminder, the application period for Charge Up Fairfax pilot program closes on June 30th, and please reach out with any questions. We hope you all have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.